Warning: the following information is for educational purposes only. Do not try this at home.
Today I'm going to show you 3 crazy ways to start a fire without matches or a lighter. 3 ways that don't involve a lot of skill, just a little bit of knowledge to put some items that most likely you have in your possession to work for you. You're thinking, hey, I signed up for adventure travel videos. I don't want to learn survival stuff. But guys, here's the thing. What if you're trekking in the Andes, in the Himalayas? Your plane crashes in the top of a mountain. You're climbing Mount Kilimanjaro and you get trapped in an avalanche. You're in a third world country and there's a tsunami. All the power's down. It's a free-for-all. You don't know how to fend for yourself to take care of your basic needs. So these survival tips are applicable whether you're in the wilderness, in a third world country, in a disaster scenario, or, God forbid, the zombie apocalypse. You've probably seen this first one before. Starting a fire with a bag of water. And the principle behind this actually applies to several different objects, not just a bag of water. What it is called the lensing effect, and essentially what you're doing with that bag of water, you're harnessing the power of the sun and creating a lens with the curved part of the bag, and the water focuses the light from the sun down to a single point. And what you can do, much like a magnifying glass, is use that to start smoldering. And typically what you want to do is have very fine tinder or really dark, like newspaper print. If you can focus on one letter of the newspaper print or a piece of paper with a black marker dot, that will absorb the heat better than just a blank white piece of paper, or very fine dark tinder. I'll give you a hack on how to get tinder wherever you are in a minute. Now this effect applies to like eyeglasses. It would apply to like a clear plastic bottle of water, a clear glass bottle of water. I've seen people do it with almost very clear balloons. When they're swollen with water, it creates a translucent lens that the light can pass through and magnify to create that intense focused beam of light in one small area. I've also read that some people have done it with condoms filled with water because they're so thin and clear. Whatever you can use that's thin, clear, and has a curve to it to give you that lens to magnify the sun's rays into a tiny, intense, focused beam of light into a tiny point of really fine, preferably dark tinder. The second method we're talking about today is a battery, in this case a AA battery, and a gum wrapper. Now there's only 2 particular brands of gum that have this foil wrapper on it anymore. It used to be on pretty much every type of gum. Right now only 5 and extra brand gum come in this foil wrapper. And the idea is the foil will conduct electricity from the 2 points and it'll generate heat enough to ignite the paper. But as you can see, the way it's working right now, it's not igniting. And that's because what you want to do is create a tiny point on the paper so that it's almost like a minuscule hanging on by a thread. And by doing that, it concentrates the power of the battery to that very tiny, fine thread and will actually ignite. So something along those lines, you can see it's starting to smoke. What that'll do is that'll ignite some tinder. A quick, easy hack to get tinder. If you're wearing jeans, it would probably work for any type of material, but the way I learned to do it was on jeans. You basically rub your knife back and forth on the jeans and it'll create a little piece of lint that you can use as tinder. I would have it positioned where I could just throw my little tinder right on top of there and obviously have the rest of my fire built, smaller twigs, and then moving into bigger logs, so I'd have my tinder bundle there and then I could just throw it into my fire. The good thing about this method is you can also use a piece of wire to arc 2 ends, maybe like splice a phone charging cord or earbud cord, and this works for any type of battery, just to get a spark to ignite some tinder to start a fire. A 9-volt battery, for example, you could use that on some steel wool. It'll have a similar effect as this. Even if your cell phone is dead, you could also use your cell phone battery for this, because usually there's enough of a charge left in the battery where you could arc it with your knife, you could arc it with some steel wool, you could arc it with a piece of wire. So that's the second method. The third method, which actually also incorporates the cell phone, is a very dangerous, hazardous method which I absolutely recommend you do not try to practice. This is potentially explosive and extremely dangerous. And the idea is the lithium-ion battery in your cell phone. There's no charge left, you can't get it to arc. What you can do is you can spike that lithium-ion battery with your knife, with a rock, and lithium, when it's exposed to air, will combust. So if you do it right, that battery will potentially explode into a campfire size fire. You can accelerate that process by pouring a little bit of water onto the spiked battery. The lithium-ion battery that has a hole in it, punctured, a drop of water, that will rapidly cause an explosive fire. Now, lithium chemical fires are extremely hazardous. They produce hazardous smoke. They're very violent and they erupt quickly. So you want to try to put water on that from as far away as possible to accelerate it. Again, you also want to have your fire built with your tinder, your logs, everything like that, so you can just kind of have that ignite under your wood to start your fire. Again, do not practice this at home. It's potentially fatal. I mean, you can die from suffocating from the chemical fumes. It's a last-ditch survival effort. Almost everyone carries a cell phone. A lot of people have laptops. Anything with a lithium-ion battery you can do this with. Spike the battery, expose it to air. If it doesn't combust from exposure to air, add a little bit of water, but stay back as far as possible. The gas is extremely toxic and harmful. So my tip would be, once you get that lithium-ion battery fire started, get it to ignite something else so that you can smother the battery and put out the toxic gas fire. You don't want to breathe in those fumes. 3 ways to make a fire without matches or lighters. Use these tips very carefully. Don't try this at home, only in a survival situation. But armed with this knowledge, be confident to get out there, find your adventure, and be infamous. And I know what you're thinking. This is an adventure Hey, you know, you're climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. Is your high... Don't know if I can do this in the park. Don't try it at home unless your home is somewhere where the grid has gone down. It's a zombie apocalypse situation and you're surrounded by cannibalistic hordes.
Infamous.